All right, everyone. Welcome to the Elokus podcast. This is going to be the class number one in the discourse Tzion b'mishpat Tipadeh, which is the 11th discourse in the great book, B'Shashegdimu 5672. So this is class number one. We're beginning a new discourse today. This is discourse number 11. So we concluded 10 and we're on to number 11. I love the number 11, as those of you who follow my other classes, so I think this is very special. Overall, the book has 144 discourses. We've finished 10. We're in double digits already, so that's an accomplishment. We have a long way to go. Then there's a whole section of it that is not even divided in discourses, so let's add another 100 discourses. Enough material, so it's about 244 discourses altogether, or at least 200 discourses. So there's a lot to learn and to explore, but it's exciting to be in discourse number 11. Now, what is extra special over here is this is the last discourse, and what I would say is the first theme and the first of the book. In other words, the book we've discussed so much, but there are certain primary themes, and the first 11 discourses, and together with the first chapter of discourse number 12, is all to develop and bring to our understanding the concept of or pnimi, of internal light, and trace it from its original beginnings in the Or Ein Sof, all the way down as it manifests in Atzilus, as we're learning now. And then from discourse number 12, he's going to start to discuss, he's going to begin exploring the Or Makif, which is what he began with in the beginning of the book, when it speaks about the angels coming down and tying crowns to our heads. Crowns are an Or Makif, encompassing lights. And the difference between the Or Pnimi and the Or Makif, as we're going to learn after the conclusion of this discourse. This discourse is going to continue and in a phenomenal way explain to us the difference between Chachma and Bina, and how Chachma is so, the experience of Chachma is a whole different experience than Bina, furthering the idea that the Or Pnimi has different gradations and levels, and how and that the differences are not only in quantity in terms of more light, less light, but there is real hischalkos, there's real division in the Or Pnimi as it manifests from level to level to level. Okay. But before we begin the discourse itself, the only thing we didn't learn yet was the kitzer, the summary of the last chapter. So let's do that quickly. To summarize chapter 40, and I forgot to mention, we are beginning also chapter 41. So this is the first summary of chapter 40, which is the final summary of discourse number 10, kitzer. So let's do the kitzer. Remember, he spoke that there's two levels of ilava alol, two levels of cause and effect, when the cause and effect are close to each other. Remember, we discussed that. One of them was that the alol is a mahus achar, is a different substance than the effect is a different substance than the cause, but it's being carried by the source, by the cause in a hidden way, like a mother carrying a baby inside her womb. And the process is just, it's like midos and seichel, as we discussed, intellect and emotions. Emotions are not the same substance as intellect, two different entities. And one it's just that the system, the way Hashem set it up, that one should evolve from the other, is that this substance called emotions is hidden in a concealed way inside the source, in the intellect, and from there it evolves. To understand this better, listen to a few classes ago. And so but that was one type of iloviyol. The second type of iloviyol was where the effect coming from the cause is away from the cause. It's like, remember he said, a teacher who has the intelligence of the teacher that produces the intelligence of the student. The student's intelligence is a olol, it's an effect, a close effect from the teacher's causative intelligence. But over here, it's not a different substance. The same substance is just a ray, an external ray of it. So that's what he says. It's like the influence of the intellect, which is only a ray. But But remember, we learned that since it's part of the Ilo Va'olol experience, it's always in the level of chitzonius, of the external. Shugam ken raka ora. It's only a ray. And that's the reason why, since it's only a ray, meaning the source, the mother of the baby, the teacher's intelligence that becomes the source for the student's intelligence, is not the essence of the mochen of the teacher, but also only the chitzonius of it, the external of it. And because it's the external of it, that's why it's possible to have Ilo Va'ol. I'm not going to go into the whole explanation now. We've learned many of it, so we're doing the kitzur quickly. And that's the reason why the effectee can know the way it comes into existence is by knowing its cause. And it comes in a way of equivalence, close to it. And that it can get closer to its source. If it would be dealing with essence, essence is unknowable. So the fact that the effect can get closer to its cause, like the student can reread what the teacher taught again and again and again and get it deeper and understanding, like after 40 years, a student knows the teacher complete or knows the mind of the teacher, is a sign that it can get closer. And this is all a sign that we're dealing with a chitzonius. Yosef and Nasab Dakas Yosef becomes more refined. Emotions, we also learned. All this is not possible in essence. I know it sounds, if you're just picking it up right now, this is not so clear. But again, if I'm going to go there, we're going to spend 30 minutes on this. So please go back a few classes ago to the beginning of class A and B of chapter 40. And you'll get all the information there. But the difference between Chachma and Bina is that Bina is chitzonius, is external, and therefore it's the beginning of the Ilo Va'olol type of evolution. But Chachma is above it all, because Chachma is essence. Chachma Bina Riya V'Shmiya, and it's also considered like the difference between seeing and hearing. And even the midos of Chachma, like we learned, even though the midos of Chachma are on a lower level, but they are also still part of the Chachma experience, as we gave the example of Rav, who had this very clear Riyah. He saw something, and then even though they stumped the rabbi, they asked him a question which he couldn't answer, he still held on to the truth that he had. So you see that there is a certain absolute emes that shines in Chachma that's not there in Bina, it's only in Chachma. And even the emotions, as they are in Chachma, carry that emes, carries that truth. And with all of this, this part of the kitzur will remember because we learned it in the last few days. With this, we'll understand the idea of vows which are from Bina, the heter nedarim and the undoing of vows, machachma from chachma. And then we'll understand better when it says Moshe speaks to the heads of the tribes. Okay. Here we're continuing the next discourse. Okay, the next discourse, this is the Rebbe, the author, Rabbi Rashab was saying these discourses started in Shavuos. We're learning it already over here, 2 years. But he started in Shavuos, and he said these 10 discourses throughout the summer. And this discourse was on Shabbos Chazon, which is the Shabbos before Tisha B'Av, which is the time when we focus on the redemption of the exile and the redemption of the Jewish people. So the Haftorah, the portion of the prophets, that's at the conclusion that we say after the Parshas Devarim, which is the first Torah portion in Deuteronomy, is unrelated to at least openly to the Torah portion, but rather it deals with the period of time of mourning and the time of seeking redemption and that. So it opens up with the pasuk Tzion b'mishpat Tipadeh. It's a pasuk in Isaiah in which it says Tzion, that Tzion, which is referring to Zion, b'mishpat, through judgment, Tipadeh, she will be redeemed. V'shaveh, and her captives b'tzedakah are going to be redeemed through tzedakah, which is righteousness or charity. So now we ask the question, what does it mean when he says Tzion b'mishpat? What does it mean when it says Zion will be redeemed through mishpat, Tzion will be redeemed with mishpat? So the question is asking, why are we emphasizing only the redemption of Zion? Tzion is referring to the city of Jerusalem is called Tzion, which means the Jerusalemites, the people of Yerushalayim. What's with the rest of the Jewish people? Are all in exile. How about the Jews who lived in Eilat? How about the Jewish people who lived in Be'er Sheva? How about the Jewish people who lived in all the other places in Tiberias? What's with them? Why the redemption only of Tzion? So Kavana, the intention over here definitely is Al Klolos Yisroel and all of Israel. Not only on the dwellers of Zion, which is Jerusalem. So why does he emphasize that the redemption, this Tipadeh, this being redeemed, is Tzion, And we also need to understand what is the difference between Zion itself, which seems to be all the people, it's the people, and Vishaver, her captives. All the people of Zion went into captivity. Exile is a captivity. So if you're taking Zion out of exile, which means the Jewish people, then the captives are also redeemed. It seems to be differentiating between the two. And the Tzion is through mishpat, through judgment, and the captives are taken out of their captivity through tzedakah. So we need to understand the difference. This is another idea. From what he said earlier, we need to understand what is that. Why is it that Zion gets redeemed through mishpat, and her captives b'tzedakah through tzedakah? And to understand this, we have to first preface Mashon is Barlel. This that we explained earlier, like he does classic in all these discourses. He poses a question or two related to the Torah portion, or in this case, the portion of the prophet of the week. That's a heading and a closing, but then he goes right back in a way that seems to be utterly divine. It's so incredibly reading at that time the themes that he's exactly holding by at that time. He's always extrapolating and connecting him in a most perfect way. If you thought about the difference between Chachma and Bina, how we learned in last discourse, and how we're holding in the middle of that discussion, and then it falls out the week of Parshas Matos. You see, there's a divine guiding hand over here. That's what I'm saying. That the Rebbe says it at Parshas Matos. He could have been holding at that place a week earlier or a week later. Yet it's Parshas Matos, where the whole idea of the opening of Parshas Matos is the quality of Chachma over Bina, through which you can annul a vow. It's amazing, and so it happens week after week. So I find that incredibly hashgacha pratis, divine providence, guiding the Rebbe over here to find and to connect each theme to its appropriate week that he said it. Although when he wrote the discourse, he wrote it independently, without these opening and endings. So it's really, really cool. We first have to preface Mashon is Baal the eldest that we said earlier. That in the 10 spheros there is a division, there is a higher and a lower, because that's in Esa spheros, and it's also in the entire Kav. It's or Pnimi, there is an upper and a lower. The Inyan Ma'ila Mata, and the idea of higher and lower, is the idea meaning more and less. More meaning in the higher levels of the Kav. And therefore, since the Kav gets narrower as it's passing through all the various levels, so the Kav goes through the Sphirot into Esa Sphirot, so there as well, the Kav is in a state of dimming, becoming dimmer, and dimmer means less light. So therefore, there's more light and there's less light. Then in the higher level, the light is shining in a more revealed way from the lower level. In his bar, and we learned, however, this is the last piece that he added in the conclusion of discourse number 10, mainly in chapter 39 and chapter 40. In his bar, I think he began with this in chapter 39. In his bar, and we explained the ikar inyan ma'ila mata, the main idea of higher and lower. It's not only in terms of more light and less light, but is in the essential substance and their level. That the higher level is not only a vessel for more light, but because it's a vessel, because of who it is and what it is, yes, more light will come into it, because it's essentially deserving for more light, because it's a higher experience. It's utterly positioned in a higher place. As we gave the example, we said it's not only because it showed up first and got online earlier, and that's why it's receiving more. We gave the example of them distributing lemonade. I don't know if I gave it exactly like that the people in the back of the line are going to get less. Their cups they're distributing, the guy who's pouring sees he doesn't have that much. He's giving less and less. So because you showed up last, you end up with a quarter of a cup or a third of a cup. If there was one who showed up earlier and got online earlier, but yes, it's that as well. But the reason why it's that, why did you show up and get on the back on the line, is because you deserve to be in the back of the line. Because of the quality of the type of vessel you are, you belong to be, it's a coarser vessel belonging more behind. And that's the idea. That the higher and the lower in the lineup is because be'etzem alat madrigas, and its essential quality. Legaba madrega tachtayna, in compared to the lower level. And like chachma bina. Shachachma, like chachma, be'etzem madrigas, and its essential quality, lamayla me'pchenes abina, is much higher than the bina. The bina, the theme of the entire 40th chapter was the bina teifeses rak b'pchenes ametzias delukus. That bina grasps only the existence. The entire bina experience is bina does not know the Or Ein Sof intimately, meaning knowing its substance. It only knows the Or Ein Sof in terms of knowing a description of it, in as much as it's possible to know description of it. It knows the about it of the Or Ein Sof. Sorry for that. It happens to be right when we start learning over here that the garbage collector, the trash collector, comes in the alleyway behind where I'm giving the class and is picking up the super garbage. So that's the beauty of us learning. We can be learning the secrets, the deepest qualities, the deepest truths of Mashiach, of the Ein Sof light and of God. And we're doing that in a world where there's big trash cans being picked up and Noah's making garbage trucks. And yet that's what God enjoys, that in this lowest existence, we are discussing his light, his truth, even in a place of disturbing noises. I think that's really cool. Okay, now it got a little quieter now. V'chachma and chachma teifeses b'pchenes hamahos. Chachma can be tofes, chachma can touch, can hold, is latching on to the substance of the Ein Sof. Okay. And that's what we learned, that chachma is considered like seeing, like a vision, and bina is considered like hearing. Now, again, this was learned about 2-3 weeks ago. We learned that because so it was a week and a half that we didn't give any classes, and then we came back only learning the matos connection. You might have to go back a little bit to the understanding of the difference between chachma and the bina, which was in chapter 40, but before he began to discuss the chachma and bina. Okay, let's now open up. Now we open up chapter 41. However, we still need to understand chachma is also a form of, it's one of the intellectual faculties. Chachma is not eyes. Chachma is associated with vision, but chachma is part of intellect, which means that when you're having a chachma experience, it is part of the intellectual process. It's that first brilliant flash of illumination of the mind, which is the beginning of understanding. So if that's the case, chachma as well is in the realm of intellect, as opposed to, as we were saying, if we argue when we say that chachma is utterly above intellect, it's an experience of a pure visual. You're standing and you're seeing something, but you're not processing intellectually. So then you can say that Bina is intellectual process, and Chachma is just seeing it without any processing in a manner of intelligence. And then Chachma would be utterly, completely above and beyond the entire Bina experience. And then we would have a very good support for the argument that Chachma is utterly above Ishtalshalus, above the entire order of evolution of into the Bina. Bina is already the source of emotions and all that, how we learned earlier how all of that evolves. But Chachma is above and beyond. But he's asking the question, isn't Chachma as well the beginning of the intellectual process? And there is some seichel of Al Kapanim, and at least now one can argue in Chachma itself there is the higher Chachma and the lower Chachma. And we can say that at least we have to agree that the lower points of Chachma are very much in the range of intellect. You're right. There is a very lofty Chachma. So we understand that in every sphere there are 10 sphirot. So maybe in the Chachma of the Chachma, or maybe even in the Chabar of the Chachma bin Adas of the Chachma, over there it's utterly beyond any type of processing intellectually. It's a purely like a prophetic experience. It's like you're being shown something. Something is like something opens up, and there is a powerful visual that the mind is seeing, right? But at least in the lower levels of Chachma, Kamai, for example, we know that part of Chachma is what we call Nekudas HaSkala. Nekuda as the Skala means the point of the conceptual experience. What does Bina do? Bina takes a point and Bina fleshes the point out. Bina probes the point, opens it up, expands it with a microscope lens, and looks and sees everything that's contained in that decimal point, or seminal point. And what's the Chachma? Chachma is where the entire concept is all concentrated in one nekuda, in one point. It's like you're getting it. It's like as we know that every time a new idea comes into a person's head, it first comes, as we discussed earlier, as a flash, and then you expand on it. So if we're looking at Chachma as the flash, the seed, which will later turn into a fruit, it's not utterly apart from the Bina. It's actually very much part of the Bina. It flows directly right into Bina. And Bina has very much a grasp on that. It's Kamainakudas Haskala, the Bederach Klal in general. Good. So he says, I'll concede, he says, that's the bottom levels of Chachma, but at least it's the bottom level of Chachma, because we associate Nekudas HaSkala, the point, when we say that the Chachma, in other words, what most of us are comfortable with calling Chachma is only the nether Chachma. The real most of the Chachma, the higher Chachma, the bulk of Chachma, if you want to use a very bad word, but if I'm using the primary experience of Chachma is utterly beyond that Nekuda, that intellectual point. It's pre-intellectual point. It's still a pure light that's above a point of reason, a point of a logic. The point of logic is the tippy end, is already a concentrated end of that visual. But al kapanim, that's called Yesod. The Yesod of Chachma. What's Yesod? Yesod is always the power of any sphere and every attribute to pass something over to the next level. Yesod is bonding. Yesod is associated with the male ability to pass over to the female, which means to pass, to transmit. So Bina is the female in this case, the understanding that receives from the male, the droplet, the seminal drop. So that's from the Yesod. So you say, when does the powerful undefinable experience become concentrated into something, into a substance that can be given over from the man to the woman, from the chachma to the bina. That's in the yesod. And in psychologically, that's when you have already a point of logic, a point of understanding. And the earlier stages of chachma are still way, as we said before, almost like a prophetic type of an experience, where something is being shown and you don't have no grasp at all. The bederach klal in general, zebchen is yesod abba. It's the yesod of chachma. However, you're right. I'll give it to you. That's the bottom of chachma. But at least in the bottom of chachma, in the lower end of chachma, at the tail end of chachma, so to speak, there is already a relationship to bina. This is a yediyah. It's a knowledge. It's an intellectual form of knowledge. And it's called already a revealed intellect, as opposed to the powers of chachma that are still called chachma stima. They're still very much the chachma as it is hidden, as it is concealed. And the entire operation of bina, which is the entire dissecting ability of bina, where bina will get to work and process that the concept and open it up to all of its breadth and all of its depth and all of its details. So v'chol hasaga de bina, and the entire grasp of bina, what does bina have? What to work with? It's that droplet of the point of the idea that chachma passed over to bina. B'nekudas haskala de chachma is in that nekuda, in that point, that chachma dropped into bina. It's like the mother has nothing to work with if the father did not give her a droplet of the germ of the child, which contains everything in it. She's now going to develop it. It's like the chala saga de bina b'nekudas haskala de chachma is like the handing out doing a challah bake, and they give everybody a piece of dough. Then you can stretch this piece of dough and turn it into the most beautiful, 16-piece braided challah if it's big enough to make 16 pieces of it. But whatever it is, you have to start working with something, and all that bina has to work with is within the nekudas haskala de chachma. The imkein comes out. Gam nekudas haskala hu b'bchinas seichel v'hasaga comes out that yes, it's still a very early stage of the development, but at least it's already an idea. I have something to work with. Hareikam nekudas haskala, that nekuda, that point, hu b'bchinas seichel v'hasaga, is in the range of seichel, of intellect, and hasaga, of grasping. Loy, and he says in parentheses, loy b'bchinas hasaga mamish. It's not a fully graspable thing like it is in bina, avalu sichli, but it's already in the range of intelligence. It's already lending itself to the process of logical exploration. It's not a pure lofty type of knowledge which is just a visual, a vision in which you don't even have a beginning to make sense out of it. A vision is you're not making sense of it at all. Here there is some sensical element already. It's tickling your intellect already. So it's close. It's within the range of intellect. Now, and therefore, what is he challenging? He's challenging the idea that chachma is utterly above bina. You see, it's not utterly above bina. It's in a sense very much part of the chain. It's like a link. Remember, we were using when you have a chain made up of links. At least the bottom part of each link goes into the space of the next one. So just like the bottom of the intellect goes into the emotions, the lower part of the chachma enters the space, pervades the space of the bina. If that's the case, this seems to negate his premise that he said earlier, that from bina and downward is ilava olol, is like a chain, and chachma is above that chain. No, chachma is very much in the same category. The imeyos, and even though you're going to argue to me and you're going to say what? Oh, That's only the tail of Chachma. Well, that's the true about Bina as well. It's only the bottom of the intellect that goes into the emotions, that informs the emotions. And here it's the bottom of Chachma. Once you see that part of the Chachma experience is already relatable to Bina and is in the range of intellect, that already takes the entire Chachma into that place. So let's see how he goes there. The higher levels of Chachma are still above intellect and hasaga and grasping. It's in a manner of vision. This amtus, and it's in a manner of a experience of a truth, untampered and unrestricted to how much vessels I have for that truth. It's seeing truth. It's the truth intruing itself. That's a word, I don't have a good word for his amtus, but the truth intruing itself into you, not you being the barometer of the truth, but the truth making itself true into your reality. That's the idea of his amtus. It becomes fully revealed to you, that truth. So, not that I understand, because once you're dealing with understanding, it's already relative. How much I see and how much I understand. The truth is beamed. It's being beamed onto the person, beaming in that truth into the person. And we can say, well, that's utterly beyond intellect. However, the lower levels of Chachma, Shanasa Makar Labina, which becomes a source to Bina, is intellect, is Seichel, and is Hasaga. And is already in the beginning of a logical process. The imkain, and if so, how is it that we say Shachachma be'etzem ahusa? That Chachma, in its essential quality, Madrigas, in its level, who he b'pchenas Ma'ila is in a level of Ma'ila of being completely above Ma'achar sin shegama Chachma b'pchenas Yediyah Sichlis. That also Chachma is in the range of Yediyah Sichlis, of intellectual knowledge. V'chol Seichel v'hasaga, and what does that do? That seems, at least on the bottom levels of Chachma, that it's not in the substance of Elokus. In other words, the whole quality of Chachma over Bina, as we said earlier, Chachma experiences the mohus, the substance of God, and Bina is only the outer, the chitzonius. It's only the about it of the divine, but not the substance of it. Knowing it externally, not knowing. But we would have to then argue that at least in the lower levels of Chachma, it also has that deficiency. The whole seichel v'hasaga, and every intellect and every grasping, is only in the metzius, because in the substance of Elokus, leis machshava tvisa, but you can't grasp it. Imkain comes out, harei mishtava hachachma el habina, that at least on the lower level of Chachma, Chachma and Bina have a certain equation, be'etzem ahusa, in their essence. Umischalekes, and the difference then will only be that since this is still a very early state of logic, it can accommodate a lot of light, and over here there's less light. But the difference is no more fundamentally. The difference is just, it's not qualitatively, it's just quantitatively. And it's different, and its difference is only more light or less light. Now, the simple answer would be, we're gonna leave that for next class, is you're right. The bottom part of Chachma is not fundamentally different than Bina, but the upper part of Chachma is. But he's going to reject that, because he's going to say the essential, the essence of a certain level has to carry through in all of its details. In other words, if something is the essence of what Chachma is, it has to be present even in the lowest point of Chachma. If that's the true quality of what Chachma really is. So if this is a detail of Chachma, it has to contain within the truth of Chachma. And if you're going to argue that the essence of Chachma is that Chachma is fundamentally different than Bina, because Chachma has a mohus relationship with the Or Ein Sof, a substance relationship with the Or Ein Sof, and Bina does not have it, it would have to hold true even in the lowest point of Chachma. And if it doesn't, then you have a problem. So that seems to reject the. We'll leave it by the question. We'll continue Be'ez Hashem in the next class.